Hey guys, I'm Iffy, one of your co-hosts. Thank you so much for tuning into the Get Paid to Live podcast, where we explore how to intentionally design a life where you live first and get paid second. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you work for someone else, or you're just curious about how to create your dream life. In these episodes, you'll find the inspiration, the tips, and the motivation on how you can navigate that process through our honest reflections as new entrepreneurs. We have such a juicy episode today, and I can't wait to dive in. But before we do, we want to take a few minutes to tell you about a new end-to-end recording and podcasting platform that can help you find your dream audience and customers called Riverside. It has such a beginner-friendly interface, and it's super intuitive even from the first time that you go in. This way you can spend less time tinkering with fancy editing softwares and spend more time clarifying your message, what actually matters. It's powered by AI to cut out speech breaks, create clips automatically, and transcribe your videos. So no more manual captions. These are just a few of the many features. Personally, some of my favorites are the high quality recording features, the magic clips, the captioning, and the teleprompter screen that comes up when you're recording. We've used a high quality recording to host 2 international guests virtually, and it was so easy for them to join, set up. All they had to do was press a button and they were brought into the studio at the max quality for their computers and audio. You can even record up to 4K and adjust the audio pre or post production to make it sound like you're in a studio. I love using the chat features, the script, and the teleprompter to stay on top of discussion points. And it's not just for podcasters. If you want to edit long or short form video for Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts, or even host a live stream, it's got you covered. They have so many fun features to play around with. You can even add in customized branding and animate your captions so they move when you're speaking. And lastly, with the magic clips feature, we're able to make 10 plus pieces of content from one episode in literally just 1 second. I'm not kidding. You press a button and it creates these different pieces of content for you about the juiciest parts of your episode. So if you're ready to pull the trigger and get your content out there with a frictionless editor and recorder, be sure to use the code IFOMA, which is IFEOMA, to get 15% off your paid plans. And biggest of all, thank you so much to Riverside for sponsoring today's episode. Without further ado, let's get into today's conversation. If you guys heard Shawhin's, if you guys heard his gulps in the last few episodes, I want to send.
No one saw it.
That is true, but if you were the one of few people who saw it, I want to formally apologize because that was a lot. Do you have anything to say?
I regret nothing. It's chilly here in Boston.
It is chilly here in Boston. That's like trying to subtly tell people we're in Boston. We are in Boston today. It's kind of like a vacation, but it's more for your meetup. Actually, it is for your meetup.
Yeah, we came for a meetup. Now we're doing a podcast.
TDE meetup.
Yeah, TDE, the Data Entrepreneurs meetup yesterday, podcast today, and then we fly back tomorrow.
Yeah, but the podcast wasn't like a part of the plan. We're just like, oh, we might as well just film while we're here. Yeah. Since we're like feeling vacation vibes, we're just having a chill time, we thought we're not going to stick to the script today. We're just going to kind of like chat and catch up because it's been some time since we filmed an episode. So yeah, we're just going to go rogue on this episode. I feel like we had another one like this where we were just like tired, so we were just talking. And we'll see what we make of this and let us know if you like this style or not so we can know if we can continue to do this or not.
So what's going on, Iffy?
Man.
What's going on in Iowa Collection Studios?
What's going on in my world right now? Yeah, Iowa Collection Studios, which is the name of my LLC, has a lot of moving parts lately. But I feel it's more on the personal end right now because I have just been more clear than ever that I can no longer, and I don't want to say never, but I'm pretty confident that I don't want to work for people.
You don't want to freelance.
I would rather freelance in like a very short project basis,
or like freelance a very specific
thing,
service, not open-ended.
Yeah, no projects that require recurring
essentially like work for hire, just temporary.
Yeah, very temporary work. So like I still consider like, because I feel like content creators are even like freelancers, like you're basically just like freelancing a video or like whatever. Right. But I just don't want to have anybody, like I work for someone else. I don't want that association. It's kind of like
a manager.
Yes, I want to do a collaboration where we're both independents coming together and doing a thing, but I don't want to be like I report to someone. I have to like work in a team that's not my own, that like I didn't create. It doesn't feel like it matches. And if I'm pretty sure we like kind of been updating in the past episodes, but if this is not making any sense, I have been kind of just on my own for the past year ever since I decided to, start my dream life, start working for myself, start my own company. So this past September, I guess, I was like, okay, I am going to accept work because I need to pay some bills. We've been kind of surviving off savings this whole time. And I need to keep my stuff going. Like, it's not that I have a lot of overhead, but me as a person is kind of the business. So I have to like keep myself going basically. So I decided to get some more clients, and I was applying to a lot because I wasn't seeing anything, and they all happened to reach out and like want to start working together at the same time. So for the past few months, I have just been like doing freelance work on top of everything else I typically do, which is like my content. I'm doing product research. I am talking to like my customer. I'm doing like so many, like everything under the sun, posting on every platform. And I was like, let me just try to do all of it because I don't want to stop my stuff. But it's been very overwhelming. I think I've burnt out like 2 times already in the past 2 months. And it has taught me that I am just not willing to put my stuff to the side for clients. Like, it's no longer a priority, which is so funny because a few years ago, I could barely get myself to post a video. I would always prioritize my client work and always try to, like, that was the main focus. And now I can't even be bothered for more than like a few months to disregard my things. So it's been more bitter than sweet, but it's good knowing that I know for a fact that I have to, like, for the rest of my life is full-time entrepreneurship, like nothing else.
Yeah, and for more context, you were freelancing for a while, doing social media marketing for hire, helping startups and small businesses post on social media, get their content strategy together.
Yeah.
And you're doing that pretty successfully, but then at a certain point, you realize that it didn't really align with the long-term goal.
Yeah. That happened in, like, I quit my corporate job 2020. I started freelancing 2021, and I basically did that until like 2023.
Yeah.
Full time.
So you're doing that, and then you stopped for about a year freelancing.
This past year.
And then you came back to it with this one client, and then you kind of realized all the reasons why you walked away.
Yeah, essentially.
So it's just interesting that even though it's so, you've been reminded of all the reasons why, in some ways I feel like that reminder was necessary.
I do too. It was
Because it gave you this fuel and motivation and clarity of, okay, I know I don't like doing this and I don't want to do it, so I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's good, and even though it's kind of painful to remember again, it made it like now I could never go back because I'm just gonna remember this experience. And by the way, yes, it was one client that I got, like recurring client, where it's kind of like I have a manager, but I also have been doing other one-off consulting too. So it's been a lot of different consulting calls where it's like maybe I meet with the same client a few times, like 2 to 3 times, but I don't report to them. You know what I mean? It's like I'm a consultant, they're just like the client. And then I had a bunch of those plus the recurring client. So it felt like a lot plus all the other stuff I have to do. Like I have UGC deals that also came in. I do like UGC though. So I'm not like that one I wasn't complaining about. It's just everything at once was making me feel like I have to dedicate my creative brain to everybody else except myself. Like that just felt wrong. And now that's going to be the memory in my head anytime I get the idea to be like, oh, maybe this job wouldn't be too bad, or maybe that client sounds fun. No. Like nothing is worth giving up my things for. And I guess I needed to be reminded of that, I guess, like it doesn't feel like it in the moment, but I probably will need this moment for like 6 months from now or a year from now when.
Yeah, because I feel like whenever there's this easier option, like freelance is comfortable, it's familiar.
Yeah.
And the money's good.
Yeah.
So with that, there's this temptation to just do that instead of going out into the wilderness or, taking a leap into that next thing. How you took that leap from corporate to freelance, which was scary and a big transition. Essentially doing that again as you delve into developing a product or something else to monetize, to
Yeah.
make revenue. Because I feel like a lot of people, when they're taking the leap from like their corporate job to some other way to make money, like some other revenue source, it's hard to make that leap because it's so comfortable and familiar, and I feel like you're going through that again. But instead of corporate to like freelance, for example, you're going from freelance to product development.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you said that too, because I think I'm starting to realize now that when I left corporate, I felt a lot of negative emotion. So it was like very clear that I shouldn't do that, or I don't want to do that. When I left freelance this last time, it wasn't like I hated freelance. There was nothing like, oh, I don't like this. I'm angry at it. It kind of just fell into my lap. My biggest client at the time was basically had laid me off. So it was kind of like, oh, I might as well like get into entrepreneurship since this is my opportunity. But it wasn't like I had any negative emotion at the
Right.
time. It was over like some time after I left that I was like, actually freelance kind of, there was some flaws for me, like with my specific industry that I kind of like realized over time, but it wasn't like that realization came before I left. And I think now was kind of like, oh, it's no longer an option for sure. Because the thing is, though, I didn't want to go back. Even for the past few months, I didn't want to go back to work. I just felt like I had to because, we have to like,
What was for your tax bill?
it was for my tax bill, the whole tax bill saga. That was what initiated it, but it never felt right. It never felt like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I will admit, when I was scrolling through jobs and like seeing like, ooh, this, it's just always kind of fun to browse. I was kind of
Yeah,
like,
just like
ooh,
when you're scrolling through job postings, like full-time job postings,
yeah.
it's like exciting.
Because you're just looking at the money and the good part. You're not looking at like what it actually requires. So I do
Right.
admit there was a little bit of temptation there when I was scrolling, but generally I didn't want to go back. I just felt like, oh, I have to. But I think now all of that temptation has been like, any remnants of temptation I had has been like, no, it's not worth it, because I remember what it's like to be in it. Yes, you get paid, but like I don't feel the satisfaction anymore with payment. Like I don't. Like I used to, like genuinely, when the money hit my account, I used to be like excited. Like I used to be like, ooh, yeah. Like now it just feels like I wish I had time to do this, or I want time to do that. Like it's more like my time feels sacred. The money doesn't really matter. Yes, I know I have to pay the bill, so like it's nice to be able to pay a bill, but that doesn't really like relieve me anymore. I have kind of deluded myself into this world where money doesn't exist. So I guess maybe that's why my brain doesn't get any relief when I pay off things. But yeah, it doesn't feel worth it. Like the money doesn't feel worth it to me, so I don't get satisfaction from that anymore. So it just kind of feels like my time is being eaten up and there's no relief. It just feels like every week there's a new task and it never runs out. And that gives me stress every day. It's not my task, it's someone else's task, and it's perpetual. Like, what kind of life is that? Which I know many people live that life, and I used to live that life, and I still am right now, but it's ending very soon. So that's my biggest update.
Yeah, so your time and what you're spending your attention on is more valuable to you than a paycheck.
100,000%. Like, I can't even explain how, like, even now we're on this vacation and we have like time to just run around and do stuff, and like we edit our video here and there, and then we get to go get a coffee or go do that. Like that, to me, that's what life is about. Like,
By the way, this isn't a vacation, it's a work trip.
this is what's happened. Like a literal work trip feels like a vacation. But that's what I was saying this to you too. Before getting on all these clients, my life felt like a vacation every day. That's what it felt like. Monday through Friday was a vacation. For a while, the weekends were kind of the work week because I didn't really have a good grasp. I didn't have a schedule on the weekend, so it was actually harder to exist on the weekends than Monday through Friday. But I kind of got like, we have a routine now. I feel like we're in a good groove. So literally my Monday through Sunday was a vacation. Every day was like, what do I wake up and get to do? Like, obviously not every single moment, but most, like I would say 90% of the time. And I knew I liked that, and I knew that was a privilege, and I knew that that was something I was grateful for and I wanted to hold on to. But now that I've been working for people and my lifestyle has had to like kind of change a little bit, I'm like, oh, this was really the life. Like, I don't care how much money I was making then. I had my time. I got to do my morning routine. I got to do things that made me happy. So it didn't even feel like work. Nothing felt like work. It just felt like life, which is what this whole podcast is about. Like that's our goal, is to like basically exist and get paid. Not like sit on our ass, exist and get paid, but like
do the things we want to do.
Right.
And do it sustainably so we can keep the lights on and keep doing that thing.
And then it just feels like one thing. It doesn't feel like these separate things.
Yeah, there's no such thing as work-life balance because it's just life.
It's just life. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent, but I just feel like that's how life should be. Things like this, getting out of alignment, has reminded me how beneficial and how necessary and actually how required it is to live in alignment, because I was seeing how productive I was. I was seeing how happy I was, how fulfilled I was doing these things that I enjoyed with the lifestyle I had like literally like prior to a few months ago. Like life felt like easy. And when I kind of ruined that and put in other work or other things, I was like, oh, this really makes a huge difference. It's not even and this is like, by the way, the client that I had is like 10 hours a week. And the other consulting calls, they're not like detrimental, and they're like an hour or 30 minutes at a time, but it's like over time they compound and they change. Oh, do you want to work out today? Or, ooh, I'm craving food today. Or, ooh, like it just changes things slowly. And I feel like I've just been observing myself for the past 2 months, and that's what's been happening. And I've been slowly getting out of my routines. I'm not motivated. I feel like my brain is kind of scattered. I feel it's like it deteriorates you. So maybe I'm being dramatic and it's not that serious, but I have noticed a shift in myself and my motivation for sure.
I feel like you've gotten a taste of what life could be like. And now that you've seen how good it can be, it's hard for you to move backward.
Yes. Yeah. It literally, when I started the jobs, it felt like I was going backwards. At first, it was more like, oh, mentally, I'm going backwards. I'm not like going forward, like literally just not going forward. But as I started to do it, it was like, it feels like my life is regressing.
Yeah.
My habits, my thoughts, like it feels like things are going back to what I was. So that's where I was like, that's where I have to draw the line. On top of that, I was just burnt out. I was genuinely burnt out because I was trying to sustain basically what I do outside of that client work is like a full-time job for sure. And then I was just adding on with the recurring clients and the other things I had going on, like all the other one-off clients, that was basically a full-time job. So it just felt like 50% of my time was being dedicated to like everybody but me. And then the other half, I was exhausted by the time I get to my things. And then I wasn't feeling as happy about it anymore. And I didn't like that. And I was like, no. So, yeah. Anyhow.
Wow, what an update.
What an update. I feel like I've been talking about this for months, like literally since it started, because I just finished a vlog with the first week when I started all of this chaos, and I've been saying the same exact thing.
Well, I also feel like it's a microcosm for what a lot of people face in their full-time roles.
Yes.
Yours happened over the course of 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
Probably
something
about, yeah.
And
Probably 6 to 8 weeks.
And I think people will experience the same thing over the course of maybe like 6 to 8 months. I feel like that's how it was like for me. Like after 6 months of working a full-time role, I was like, this doesn't make sense for me, because I'd already gotten a flavor of working for myself through my side hustles of like content creation, freelancing, consulting.
Yeah.
But it might be a different time scale. Like people over the course of, maybe a couple years or 6 years or something like that, they'll go through this same cycle of they feel their work isn't aligned with what they want to do in life, you know? And they feel like trapped. They feel like put in a box with their role. Like they don't have the freedom of doing the things that they want to do or developing, in the direction that they want to develop, But then it's familiar. So it's very hard to take that next step and leave, especially when everyone around you is, where you're at, no one has taken, like if someone's trying to transition from working a full-time job to becoming a freelancer, and they're only surrounded by their coworkers who work full-time, like who work a corporate job, like it's very hard to make that transition because you don't have any examples and no one around you is going to encourage you to do that, really.
Yeah.
Everyone's
And
gonna
it's
say,
risky too.
everyone's going to say, like, are you sure that's a good idea? Like, you're getting good benefits here.
Yeah.
You're getting a
They're
good
going to trick you
salary.
out of it.
And it's because, like, they're not the type of person to do that, you know? Because, like, most people who work corporate have been there for a while. You know, they've been there for, like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 30 years, you know? It's the people who, stick around who are going to be around, you know?
Exactly. And they're going to tell you things for where they've been.
Yeah,
where
they're
they're
going to tell
headed.
you what they would do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to take advice from them because you wouldn't trade lives with them. Like, you don't want to be where they are.
Yeah. That's really interesting. This whole, like, this is a microcosm of what people go through on a longer time scale, because I feel like every time now I go back to a job, the tolerance, the bandwidth is just getting shorter. When I first did my whole first corporate experience, I think that total was like 3 years because I interned and worked there. And then it took me like 2 years in freelance to be like, okay, I gotta move on to the next thing. And then now it's getting shorter and shorter. It's like months. Yeah. It's like a few months where I'm like, okay, I'm done. Even before this, I had a longer term client last year, but it was super, just like only one person. And I was working for them just to pay the bills a little bit. And that was like a 6-month stint. So I feel like it was more like 3 years, 2 years, 6 months, 2 months, where it's like, it's getting shorter, my tolerance to work for people. And I think at this point, couldn't even imagine being in a job longer than a few months, knowing I don't like it. So I guess it's like the skill is just skilling of like knowing when things are out of alignment. And I honestly think that's the number one skill we should learn. We should learn when things feel aligned and misaligned with us, because that's the indicator of success. Like, if you know where you're supposed to be and when, it doesn't matter how good you are at that thing. You can just literally design your success when you know that something is for you. When something is for you, it's easier. You can put more reps in, you can be better at it faster than other people, and you're happy, you enjoy it. So you're going to attract more of those people. Like, it just makes more sense to be doing things in your life that are aligned, right? This stuff that I'm doing would have been a dream for me a year ago, but it's not a year ago. And I think that's another part of like leaving jobs that makes it so hard. Everyone's like, oh, my job is good, there's nothing wrong with it. Or I'm getting good money. This is the best most people get.
It was your dream job.
Or it was my dream, but it was like not anymore. And being able to have the confidence to be like, this is right for someone else, or this is right for me a few years ago, it's not right for me now, is a really important thing to learn. Because you have to, I think we even said this in one of our initial episodes, like, you have to keep doing this. It doesn't stop. Like,
you got to keep putting your chips on the table.
Yes. Like, the more successful you get, the more options are going to come your way. And you have to say no to a lot of them. Or you're going to get distracted and keep getting in things that are not meant for you. I'm glad I had a few months of pay. I'm glad I kind of like just quickly made the plan to like get out, and like I'm doing it. I'm leaving in a few weeks. But I don't know if I'll ever make this mistake again, because it's been so many times where I've tried working for people with all my might, and it's not the work, it's not the employers, it's me. And I just need to put myself in places that match me, because I know the kind of work I can give, and it doesn't make sense to give that to anybody but myself. I will end up resenting them. I will end up becoming a shell of myself. And I've tried it in so many different flavors. It just doesn't work. And I'm glad that I accepted that sooner, because I think I had like a contract with this client, and I was going to stay the full contract actually. And I kind of had to just be like, no, I'm not. If you're feeling similarly in your job, even if you're like, I have a contract, I have to stay, I have to do that, like, just take a moment to think about what life could look like if you left, or if you were in a different situation, and plan it out. Like, pretend like you're going to do it before you actually do it, Ask
yourself, how could it work?
How could it work? Because you don't have to do anything, and never stay in something that doesn't feel good because you feel like you have to. That's not even a real thing. Like, have to is you telling yourself that you have to do something. No one can force you to do anything. So.
Wow.
And Shaw, what have you been? How's your journey going? Shawhin is a full-time datapreneur over here.
What does that mean?
That means you're just free.
Yeah. Well, freedom comes at the cost of uncertainty.
It
You know,
does. It does.
if you worked in a completely totalitarian environment where where, you know, the leadership
Yeah.
told you exactly what you could and couldn't do and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, you know, it would give you a lot of certainty, but you would have absolutely no freedom. And that's like the dark side of freedom, which is it's you have the freedom, but you're in the wilderness, you know, so you have to find your way
Yeah,
around.
you decide everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, which can be really scary too.
Yeah, it can be very scary, can be very overwhelming if you don't, you know, it's definitely overwhelming at the beginning if you don't have a mental framework
Oh yeah.
or process for dealing with uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have a strategy for navigating the wilderness, you know, especially when you're just getting started and you don't know what you're doing, where you're going, all this kind of stuff.
It kind of feels awful.
But the thing is, like, with each step, there comes more and more, it becomes easier and easier. There's more and more clarity, more and more certainty. You get better, you get smarter, you get stronger, your processes get better. And it just gets easier until, you know, you kind of look around and the wilderness doesn't look so wild anymore. You started to build things. You know, maybe you've built a little camp or built a little cabin.
Yeah.
And you've mapped out the area around you, so you have some maps and a basic understanding of the geography. But then sometimes you kind of conquer a certain area and then you have to do it all over again and trek out into the wilderness even further so you can
Go to the next thing.
get to the next level.
Yeah.
You know,
When did you feel like you kind of got conquered an area, if you will? Or like when did you feel like you kind of had a framework for the general uncertainty of entrepreneurship?
there are many points. The first big accomplishment was, I would say, just getting a full-time job, like getting a data science job. Because even though that's not what you'd consider entrepreneurship, it's business. Working as a professional at a company gives you a flavor of how business works.
Yeah.
You know, how you turn human effort into money. So getting that first job was a huge milestone
At
for me.
Toyota.
At Toyota.
Yeah.
That was a big milestone for me. Another big milestone was like making my first dollar from content creation. This realization that, oh, I can post this blog article or I can post this YouTube video and money will appear in my bank account. Like that was a shocker for me. But yeah, that's how it works. And then more recently, so I launched my first product last month,
Yeah.
Y2B. And then when I set up the Stripe integration and like made the website live, you know, Stripe is a payment processor for those who aren't familiar. And then like testing out the functionality. So like going to the website, clicking on the buy button and then doing the payment.
Yeah.
And then that realization hit me again, similar to with like posting content and getting money. It's like, oh, I just made this website and now money can appear in my bank account. Like, so I feel like these were, you know, I guess somewhat random realizations for me on this journey. Entrepreneurship is very much like being in the wilderness and there are no rules. There is no set path. There are a lot of people like you, like me, who have taken this path of working a corporate job. So you obviously have a skill set that's valuable to a company.
Yeah.
Then basically doing that as a freelancer,
Yeah.
you're doing work for hire, and that's like that helps you learn a lot of new skills because when
Yeah.
you're just a professional, you don't need to learn how to sell. You don't really need to learn how to market. You don't have to worry about admin things. You don't really have to worry about like taxes and, you know, compliance with laws and regulations.
Yeah, let alone like the interpersonal stuff. Like I feel like
client relations,
managing your time, managing yourself, like
a lot of that stuff
prioritization.
is either non-existent or just much easier when you work
Yeah.
at a large company or just work at an established business
Yeah.
that's already figured their stuff out and they're making money. But doing that as a freelancer is a good thing. And then there's a step beyond that, because the thing about freelancing is that it's just like working a full-time job,
Yeah.
but just there's more flexibility and more freedom.
Right.
You know, if you decide to, you want to take 6 months off, you have that freedom. Like,
Yeah.
you have that option. You have the option of choosing the work
Yeah.
that you pursue. So there's a lot more flexibility, but still, like, at the end of the day, once you are working a contract and with a client, it looks very similar to working a full-time job.
Yeah, and
know?
most clients, if it's like a recurring work, they're probably gonna have
Yeah.
hours, and
Yeah.
you have to turn things in. Like,
Right.
it's
Their
very similar.
deadlines, their meetings,
Yeah,
their timesheets,
Yeah.
Things like that. And so I feel at a certain point, unless people kind of love that freedom and work and they travel and do that digital nomad thing, which a lot of people do. But then some people at some point, they don't want to do that. They kind of want to make money on their own terms. And so at least for me, like, I don't want to have to get someone's permission to get paid. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
or rely on somebody
Yeah,
to get paid.
so this idea of creating a product
Yeah,
and selling that product is very appealing to me, because it feels like it affords me a lot more freedoms. But of course, the downside is that there's greater risk. It's like relatively
Yeah.
low risk to just sell your services, because there's a market for certain skill sets and certain roles.
yeah,
Like, that's why
and it's
people-
kind of there. You don't really have to like create the demand for it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
for most freelance industries, like for tech or for marketing, like there's always clients who need help with that and who don't have the energy or time to
Yeah.
make a full-time role for it. So,
Yeah, but then when you're making a product, it's a bit more effort to kind of figure out the customer and figure out the market, and then, figure out what product you're going to make, like what problem you're going to solve, and then how are
Yeah.
you going to, implement that thing. And then once you implement it, how are you going to market it? How are you going to
Exactly.
sell it?
It's even more responsibility. All the
Yeah.
things that a freelancer doesn't have to worry
Right.
about, you know?
But I feel like on this kind of path of corporate job, freelancer, product, developer, like building a business, I feel like that's a journey for a lot of people, and that's definitely the journey for me. And I like this product thing, because to me it feels like the next step,
Yeah.
So if I want to grow, like, that's the direction to go in. This was always the vision of, okay, I'm gonna, like, once I leave my job, I'll give myself 2 years to kind of figure out a product, and then once I find a good product, then I can start, building that business and, like,
Yeah.
building a team around that business, because that's one aspect of entrepreneurship that's tough, is working alone. It can be
Very lonely.
can be very lonely. So I like this idea. I've always liked this idea of working with a team. Like, even my very first job, like when we're working at Swab,
Yeah.
the team aspect was the most fun part. Just like joking around with people, working with people to solve problems.
Yeah.
So trying to get back to that, but on my own terms, like kind
Yeah.
of creating it for myself.
Right. Not event planning something with your field.
Yeah, with my field, and that is basically my own business.
Yeah.
So it's like, checking all these boxes of things that I enjoy.
Yeah. And these different milestones from corporate to, freelancer to, making your own product, whatever. Each of those steps requires you to get more and more comfortable, like we were saying, with that uncertainty, that loneliness, that whatever. So what are some of those like frameworks that you use to, like, mentally or like theoretically, to stay in the game, because I know you said you accomplished things that made you feel more secure, but how do you even get to the point where you accomplish them if you can't, like, control your mind?
Well, what has helped me a lot is having a schedule, like, and this is something, having my first job, like being an employee, is a habit that I developed, of creating a calendar and then following the things on my calendar. So even from really early on, so I guess not when I got my first job, like when I was music chair at Swab.
Yeah.
So we were event planners at our university, and I was in charge of all the music events. So I didn't really have a calendar for that. But when I became exec chair, that's when I created a calendar.
Which is like the president.
Yeah, just like
The higher level.
the manager of like all the event planners. So once I did that, that's when I had a schedule. So I think the important thing of having a schedule is that it gives you structure.
Yeah.
You know, it gives me structure. So even when I am not working at a company, I still have some kind of foundation. You know,
Yeah.
There's some structure to my days. There's some structure to my time, my attention, my effort. So it doesn't really matter if I'm working for someone or I'm not working for someone, or if I have a manager that's telling me, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. You need to come to this meeting, that meeting, whatever. I can manage myself because I can manage my time.
Yeah.
You know?
It's, sorry to interrupt. I just feel like that is huge. I still can't understand how that's not like, I think I said this in a past episode, that's why I'm saying still, but I still can't understand why this isn't bigger than it is, because I assume everybody's taught in their corporate job to like have a calendar and have meetings, but it doesn't seem like most people have like a calendar for their own life,
like outside of work.
Yeah, for their own stuff, which is kind of fascinating to me, again, because I think like it's our life, like it's your life, this is not your manager's life. So if you have a calendar at work, you damn better be having a calendar for not work, because what does your life consist of? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even about being like the most organized or not. Like, you need to constantly show up for you, for your stuff. And like your work calendar indicates that you constantly show up for work. So what is your version of that for yourself? You know, so I feel like that is huge. And I think it helps a lot more than people think. They're like, oh, it's my free time. I don't want to have to like, make it super organized because then I'm not going to be having fun with it. That means that your stuff isn't a priority. It's not being prioritized. Right. It's not being recognized. It's not being written down. And I think you can imitate a lot of the things like you were saying that you do at work and put it into your own life, because that's why those companies run. It's because people prioritize it. People put the company stuff on their calendar. That's why that business is making money. That's why that business is thriving. So it's very similar for your life. If you don't have things on a calendar, if you're not constantly doing them repetitively and making them a priority, you're not going to be,
It's just a helpful tool in managing your effort, like managing your time.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, there are many ways you can do that, but following a calendar was very helpful to me, and especially when leaving my full-time role and working for myself full-time.
Yeah.
It was very helpful because you don't have that social structure
Yeah.
to help you manage. You can't kind of use that as a crutch. You're completely self-reliant. So that was one thing that helped me. Just developing habits over time were really helpful. So, I mean, even when I was working full-time, I was doing these as side hustles.
Yeah.
So, like, the first 2 hours of every work day, I was working on my stuff. Like, I was creating content. And then on the weekends, I was working on my stuff as well. So that was already a habit. So when I left, it was just a matter of like swapping out what used to be work time with like new work, like whether it's like making content or working on projects or taking consulting calls, just doing a little swap.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like really just like time management and consistency. Seems like that really
Yeah, I
keeps you
mean,
in the game.
it's not rocket science. It's not complicated. The challenge is more emotional.
Yeah.
Because for all the reasons why it's hard for people to pick up new habits, like it's hard for people to start going to the gym, or hard for people to start dieting, because at first there's a lot of friction in doing new things. And especially when you're on your own as an entrepreneur, you don't have the peer pressure of managers and colleagues to kind of influence your behavior. Like if you don't do anything one day, no one's gonna say anything. Like if you work for yourself, like you're the only one that will know about it and is harmed by it. So you have to have the discipline or just have the habit of being able to work even if no one is telling you what to do.
Yeah, I'm really curious, even for the both of us, like what are those underlying, let me put it this way, like theorems, those theories, right? We say theorems, it's an inside joke, but kind of like those beliefs that guide the action, that habit. Because it's like, it's one thing to be like, okay, be disciplined, right? If you're an entrepreneur. But what keeps you there, mentally? Because I think like you have plenty of principles. Like Shawhin he's like the king of like principles and theories and stuff like that.
Theorems.
What is the word that you use for them? Like all your notes that you have in your notes app.
Just like tips and principles,
I
advice.
feel like principles, like just these foundational, fundamental, like beliefs that you have that keep you in the discipline. Because I mean, you can't rely on discipline. You can't rely on even your habits if mentally you're not there.
What helps kind of drive my behavior, I would say it's a few things. Like one is the force of habit. I've just been working like this for so long that it would actually be harder to not do anything all day. Like it would be hard for me to not wake up and go to the gym, not come home and start like working
Yeah.
and reading or writing or something like that. It would be hard to not be productive. But what I feel helps with that, because essentially what we're talking about now is motivation. And then there are a few, as the way I see it, there are a few key drivers of motivation. Like one, there needs to be like a reason. There needs to be purpose. So like, why are you doing this? So like for me, if I have a goal of posting 3 YouTube videos a month, then that kind of gives me a reason to um, work,
Right.
to actually work as opposed to just like, I don't know, watch TV all day or
Right.
not do what I'm supposed to do. So just like setting the like simple goals. And I think that was another thing similar to having a calendar, but just setting quarterly goals was a big thing for
Huge.
me.
Yeah.
And that's something we were doing even while we were full-time employees,
Yeah. And that's another thing companies do.
Yeah,
That's why they
something,
run.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies do these things
Yeah.
because they're effective. So just setting goals kind of helps give a reason. I also feel like having risk when the money in your savings is only going down, like that's a good motivator,
Yeah.
you know? So those are two. I had a TikTok like last year, a couple years ago, where I talked about like the 4 drivers of motivation, but I don't remember them right now. But
That's okay. Thank goodness you made a TikTok so you can watch it
yeah,
again.
but I think the audio got removed from it or something because it's like
Okay.
a sound
Well, we're
got
gonna have to go
removed.
back to our notes.
But for sure, like having a reason, like even just something as simple as a goal that you set for yourself, and then having some risk, like having some skin in the game, is helpful to stay motivated.
No, I think that's really good because that's exactly what I was thinking too. I feel like that's what keeps you like an independent, like on your own. Is you need to have something, a vision, which that's how I was thinking about it. Like you need to have a vision that is very compelling and that's really strong for you personally. That requires you to know what your vision is, but it's very compelling, and you almost have this like hunger for it. So it's like a positive thing because it keeps you like, oh, I want to get there. But no one is going to get up at 6 a.m. thinking about how fun it would be to do something. No, you get up at 6 a.m. because something is going to be painful if you don't. And I think you have to have, on the flip side of that vision, a pain and suffering that comes with not having that. And I think that's what's been a huge motivator for me. It's like not getting there is extremely painful. So being there is like the only option. And I don't know where this pain kind of developed from, but I guess I'm lucky in the fact that I don't enjoy working for people, or I do have all these annoyances or these pet peeves with it. I want to be free all day. So literally staying in corporate is more painful than
Well, I feel like a
being on my
lot of
own.
people feel these things, but since they see no alternatives, they just kind of bite the bullet. They just they swallow it. Maybe they just lie to themselves. They tell themselves stories to kind of cope with it. And
True.
to a certain extent, like if there's literally nothing you can do to change your situation,
Yeah.
like learning to live with it is important.
Yeah.
However, there usually you can do more. There's usually something you can do. Like you have more influence over your reality than you might think.
To our earlier points, I think that has been what's kept us in as well, is like we've tried the options, because even when you were at Toyota, you were side hustling. So you had options in a way. Maybe you didn't even feel the most confident in those options or whatever, but you were doing other things that made what you were doing as a full time feel a little off. I think that's like important. It's like I didn't know that editing felt so good until I did it. And then I was like, wow, this is really fun. I couldn't only imagine the people who get to do this all day. So now when I'm at work and I'm having a bad time, it's no longer like, oh, I'm having a bad time. This sucks. That's it. It's like, oh, I'm having a bad time. I can't wait to get home and do this other thing later, because I know that that's an option. It makes me feel better. And I think that's why it's important to, just figure out what you like to do, keep doing them, because it gives your brain options. But it's like a two-way street,
Right.
because when you have options, you're like, this feels awful, because you know what something good feels like.
No, that's good. Like exploring like side hustles and stuff like that. Just open your mind
It
to what's
does. What's
possible.
possible?
And I,
Yes.
I think that is always the case. Like if you work a job and don't have side hustles, you live in a certain reality. But
Yeah.
then once you even pick up one side hustle, your reality just kind of expands a little bit, you know? Um, and then that kind of makes the idea of doing your side hustle full time, or like doing freelance full time, or, being a full time writer or full time content creator, like whatever it might be, makes that sound less crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then eventually, maybe you make that transition. Um, and then that kind of makes the idea of developing a product not so crazy. Like once you kind of
Yeah.
learn how to sell and market your own services, then this idea of creating a product that solves a very specific problem doesn't become so crazy, because it's like, oh, I already know how to market and sell myself. Why can't I market and sell a product? You know what I mean? So like that, your reality gets expanded a little more. And I feel like this just keeps happening over and over again as you kind of go down this entrepreneurial path that we've
Totally.
described here. Is like your reality, the more you kind of accomplish and overcome, your reality becomes more like becomes bigger and bigger.
It does. And I think that's what's so fascinating about life. I mean, that's kind of literally like my whole vision, is to be like, what can I think of that can become real just by me like believing in it and doing it, like taking action and believing in it, both of them. And I feel like that's kind of like my mission. I want to do that for myself, and I want other people to do it too, because it feels amazing. Like when you can think of something and be like, "Oh, that'd be so nice. I can imagine how good that would feel," and you can create it and it feels good. You're like, "What the else can I do?" And I think when you start dabbling in your interests on the side, even if it's 5 minutes a day, it compounds on each other. And you're like, wait, this is important. It's not only like fun and it's a good time, like this is important. And I think a lot of people always ask too, like, how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? How do you know that, this is your mission, or this is the vision for your life, or whatever? It's by trying things. It's
Yeah.
like those little options.
Experimentation.
Yes, I feel like I didn't know this was my mission like a few years ago. It's because I just kept going one step closer to it every single year, every single month, whatever. I kept entertaining it for a long time. I think one of the biggest issues is we don't entertain our own stuff. So everyone's like, oh, they just happened. They just were born with their purpose. They just know what they're supposed to do. No, no, no. People have to do it just like you, very messy.
You have to cultivate it.
You have to make room for it, and you have to sit there and listen to it and entertain it just like you would. It's like a child. I feel like at first they're like blah, 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 like they're not making any sense, but if you listen to them, or if you like over time you keep entertaining them, they grow up into a real person with real thoughts and things like that, you know.
And also, like, the crazy thing is parents start to decipher I mean, we don't have kids, but we see this in the like friends we have that have kids. They learn to decipher the different noises
Right.
that the babies make
Yeah.
to mean different things.
Yeah.
So like for me as an outsider, I hear
Like,
the
what?
child, it's like, oh, it's just crying or just like yelling or whatever. But to the parent, like that means something very specific. Like,
And they
oh, they
know.
want a toy, or oh no, they're sleepy, or oh, they're hungry.
Yeah.
They kind of have learned to decipher it.
And then it's easy for them to take action. They know exactly what to do.
Yeah. And I feel like there's some parallels with entrepreneurship because like you're constantly getting signals, noises
Totally.
from the world, from reality.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to decipher those signals
And know what to do when at the right time.
Yeah.
And you get that through practice. And
Yeah,
I
you just
was
gotta-
I was telling him that because I was like, now that we have friends with kids, I'm like, how they're describing their life, I think it's different. I won't know what like it's like until I have my own kid, but it feels very similar. Like you are almost operating for this other being. It's not like you have a choice anymore. You kind of have to do the best you can so you can be there for that entity. This could be the child or the business or whatever you want it to be. Of course, you would assume that you would care a lot about your child once it's born, even before it's born, just like the business, you care a lot about it. Like that obviously needs to be a requirement. But I think similarly, you have to become somebody for the business. You have to become somebody for your child. You have to operate in a certain way for your child. You have to operate in a certain way for your business. And I think they can bring a lot of happiness and joy once you give it a chance, but you can't be in this world where you don't entertain any of it and be like, I don't have a purpose. And it's like, because you never listen, you never take the time to do anything with it. You're just constantly giving something else attention. And then you're wondering why you don't know what it is that you want to do. It's because you don't give it the time of day. So it takes time. But I think it's once you start doing it, and it can be very small, it becomes very clear to you. And then once it becomes clear to you, it starts becoming obvious. And that's where you start feeling like, oh, this is my mission, because it's like you see it everywhere. It's like that car or like that word that you hear, and now you hear it all over the place. That's what it's, you're tuned in. And I think that's what happens when you start entertaining these options outside of your 9 to 5,
So, I guess the moral of the story is like, if you're even curious about entrepreneurship or you kind of know long-term that's the direction you want to go in, it doesn't mean you have to like quit your job right now. It's just to like take one step in that direction.
Yeah.
You just take one step and then that makes the next step a little easier.
Yeah.
And then you take another step. So it's just like, you just take these very small baby steps, whether that's, just practicing writing, like, an hour a week, whether that's like, 15 minutes over a few days or something like that, or you just create a YouTube channel, or you go to Upwork and, just look at the different job posts that they have on there. There's like so many baby steps. Like that first step can be much smaller than people might think.
For
people
sure.
think like, oh, if I want to be an entrepreneur, I need to quit my job. I need to go get a business loan. I need to, have a logo. I need to come up with a great company name. I need to have a product. It's like, no, it can actually be very, very, very simple.
Yeah.
And you can do it for years on the side while still having your full-time job. And I think the funny thing is, like, once you have this other thing, it actually makes your full-time job more enjoyable, because you can kind of like, it kind of gives your life purpose.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have this other thing on the side that's growing and developing, and my full-time job allows me to do this.
Right.
And it kind of makes you feel like you have options, because when you only have a single source of income,
scary,
and this is all you've
I
ever
think it's
known,
scary.
like you could get laid off, like you could, you could get fired, or maybe the company goes under, or, you get moved within the company and you no longer like your role. Like there's so many things out of your control and so many ways it can go south. Just having that backup, like having that way to hedge your employment, hedge your income, I think just makes life less stressful.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I feel like I've always felt it's scarier to not have options. I think that's what motivates a lot of what we do too, is the freedom
Yeah.
And freedom means you have a lot of options. It's not even about, oh, I'm not in my corporate job, I'm just sitting here on the couch. No, that's still scary. You like having the ability and the skill to know how to create what you want when you want. I think that's real freedom, and that's what, keeps me going. I feel like we all want happiness and freedom. Like, who doesn't? So I feel like the goals are very similar. And like to your point about how you don't have to quit your job right now, like as long as you're serious and you're intentional about that goal, it can look so many different ways.
Yeah.
Like for me, I happened to leave before I even knew the options. That's not everybody's case. People don't like doing that. And that's just kind of like, I can be a little bit impulsive, but I like to call it intuitive. But I feel like I could be a bit intuitive. I didn't know the options, but I was like, I don't care. I'll figure it out. That's not everybody's personality. But that's just how I ended up trying my options. That's how I had time to do my options. Some people can safely try the options while they have a 9 to 5. That wasn't my case because I feel like I can focus on a lot of things at one time, but I know it's not going to be my best work. And I don't like working like that. But maybe you are fine with that. You have time on the weekends, or you have time before or after work, and you don't mind like giving a few, bits of your attention to try it out before you actually do it. It still gets you closer to the goal. And also, I feel like when you do try those things out and you keep doing them and they become fun, and not only fun, but interesting, rewarding, it makes leaving so much easier because you know how you feel when you do that thing. You know the output it can bring. Like a lot of people, they still have their 9 to 5 and then they start content creation and then they work on it for so long, over years and years and years, because they're maybe a little bit more risk averse. And then their content creation starts making more money than their full-time job. Now it's no longer this like anxiety trip to be like, should I leave or whatever? It's like, no, I literally know this thing can bring me more because I've not only tried it, but I've dedicated time and energy to it. I know what I can produce. I know what it produces. And it just makes that process so much easier. For me, I did that a little out of order, but again, like as long as you have intention to get to the goal, it can look so many different ways. I think it's like setting yourself and designing your life for it to be comfortable and uncomfortable at the right times. I think that's a big thing. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I want to still have my life. So you have to be willing to give something up. If the vision is that important, if the purpose, if you see it clearly, you will be willing to give those things up. And I think over time, I've tried doing the 9 to 5 life. I've tried doing the freelance life. I still feel like it never fulfills that purpose and that vision. So I think after eliminating all those, I'm like, entrepreneurship is the only way. And to be a full-time entrepreneur, I have to be a different version of myself, which requires me to make myself very uncomfortable so that I can develop these skills faster. Because if I had an income, I would just be a lot slower. And going back to work this past few months has taught me that like things just move so much slower because I don't have the energy today, or I'm tired, or I got upset from the Slack message, or I got, it just wastes time. Yeah. So I think that's another big thing.
Not bad for a no script.
I feel like we kind of ended up on like this whole like 9 to 5 to entrepreneur pipeline situation, which I guess is not news since that's all we talk about.
Well, I guess you're kind of going through that once again, so that's what sparked it, and also the conversations we were having at the meetup yesterday with people who are on that journey as well, or who are thinking of embarking on that journey. So I think it was just in the air.
It's in the air, and it's so in the air even for me and my product, which is just been, again, slowly coming together the past few months. But it's so relevant. I think especially as we get towards the new year, everybody's like rethinking life. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Should I continue? Something has to change. You don't know what. I just highly encourage you to kind of go back to the have tos. Anytime you think you have to do something, or I have to this, like just analyze that. Like, why do you have to do something? What happens if you don't? Like, how would you feel if you don't? And if you feel really excited and that thought almost like it's like thrilling, explore why that is, because imagine how you could behave if you felt like that this whole time. And I'm not even trying to say this to like, brag or boast, but I'm trying to say this because I didn't know that this was an option. And now that I've gone back to work and it's kind of ruined that fairy tale that I had before, I'm kind of confident. I'm pretty confident in the fact that like I was living the dream prior to this, and it's real. It exists. Like you can live a life where you genuinely feel like it's vacation every day, because I was doing that for like a year straight. Of course, there was like learning in between, but generally I felt like on cloud nine, and that's attainable. And now that I know that's attainable, it's making things like even a part-time job sound awful. So like, could you imagine? You know what I mean? I didn't know that this was a thing. I didn't even know that was real, that people could enjoy every single day of their life. So I just feel like it's important for me to say that that option does exist. We just don't really take the steps required to do it. There is a cost. I wasn't making money. I wasn't doing this, but like now I feel like I'm learning the skill of like how to make money while living that dream. And that can happen just with a little bit more time. So I think it's all doable. Like if you're willing to give something up for a certain time period, you can have it all. Yep.
Boom.
Boom. We're going to go explore Boston now, and we'll see you guys next time.